Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might be located. And thank you so much for joining me for today's live presentation on the top 5 tips for traveling by train in 2021. I can see a lot of folks are still getting logged in right at the moment. Of course, we're just hitting the 2 o'clock mark. So while these folks get logged in, let me just take a quick minute to point out the couple features that are showing on the screen right now. We do have a couple great handouts available for you. Please feel free to download those at any time throughout today's presentation. And in addition, please take note of that questions box. The questions box will let you type a question at any point throughout today's broadcast. We'll go ahead and answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the program. And if we don't have a chance to get to yours live on today's broadcast, do not worry because we'll have somebody from the team reach out and send you the answers that you need. So again, please feel free to ask questions all throughout today's presentation. Now, I will be your host today. My name is Colleen, and I've been with Amtrak Vacations for the last 8 years. Now, I've had the very great fortune to have traveled on many of the fantastic long distance train routes and have visited many of the destinations that we'll see in today's presentation. So, if you have any questions at all, whether it is about what life is like on board the train, about the different train routes and what you might see, or the destinations, really anything at all, please go ahead and ask those questions at any time. It's always my favorite part at the end, getting to interact with you folks and answer your questions there. So just a little bit about our presentation today, kind of what we're going to cover, just to give you a preview of coming attractions. Of course, our main focus are the great tips, those 5 tips, the important things to know about traveling by train. We'll also talk about the popular destinations and the most famous and most scenic train routes to give you an idea when you're starting to plan your vacation where you might like to go. Of course, it's not just about the train, it's about what you're going to see along the way. We'll talk about how you can route your vacation from your hometown coming right up here. And we'll also touch on how Amtrak is providing a safe environment for you folks. Now, I do always like to start these presentations with a quick look at the Amtrak system map. I just think this does such a great job of illustrating how many places you can get to by Amtrak all across the USA and up into Canada. So each one of those brightly colored lines on the map there does represent a different Amtrak route. And as you can see, they do cross the bulk of the country. You can visit actually 46 out of the 48 contiguous United States by train. And one of the 2 states in the continental US that Amtrak doesn't go to is Wyoming, but we have some great vacations up to Yellowstone National Park. So I like to say with Amtrak Vacations, you can visit 47 out of the 48 contiguous United States. Now, Amtrak also has over 500 stations across the US and Canada, which makes it incredibly easy to start from your hometown. Now, a lot of you folks might actually already live on one of Amtrak's major train routes and not even realize it. So, for example, if you live in Milwaukee or St. Paul or Minneapolis, you guys are right there on the Empire Builder train route. If you're located in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, or Grand Junction, or maybe you're in Reno, Nevada, you folks are all on the California Zephyr train route. And if you don't already live on one of the major train routes, do not worry because it's very easy to get you from your hometown station connected through one of the larger cities onto one of these major cross-country or long-distance train routes. So let's say you're coming from the East Coast, maybe you live in Connecticut, no worries. What you would do if you want to visit someplace like the Grand Canyon is take the train from your hometown station. You'd likely take it to Chicago. And then you'll have a brief layover in Chicago. It's going to be a few hours. It's enough time that you don't feel rushed trying to get from one train to the other, but not so much time that you get super bored. So they'll have you change trains in Chicago. It's changing in the same station, so you don't have to travel kind of anywhere outside. And if you are checking bags, we will check your bags all the way through. So you can check those bags at your start out station, and then you pick them up when you get to your destination. Let's say in this example, it was the Grand Canyon. Now, I do want to touch briefly on how Amtrak is providing a safe environment in these times, because I know that that is top of mind, of course, for you folks as you start thinking about planning a vacation coming up here for next year. So, of course, Amtrak has greatly enhanced their cleaning, both in their stations and on board their trains. They've enhanced the frequency of their cleaning, as well as the cleaning methods and everything like that, to make sure everything is nice and sanitized for you folks. Now, they are requiring facial coverings in all public areas, so that's in the stations and all public areas on board the train. You will need a face mask or face covering. Now, if you are going to upgrade to one of the private rooms, we'll see some great examples of the private rooms in just a few minutes. If you do take one of those private rooms on board the train, the great news is that you can remove the mask in the comfort and privacy of your own room. You would just want to put it on again if you were traveling to one of the public areas of the train. Let's say you were going to head down to the cafe and grab a snack. You would put the mask on for your trip to the cafe, but you could take it back off once you've reached your roomette or bedroom. Now, if you are traveling in the coach seating, Amtrak is limiting the number of bookings in coach to make sure that there is social distance in between all parties. So the way this works is you and your party will be seated together, but then they will make sure to leave space between yourself and the next party. If you are a solo traveler, the seat next to you will be free, so that you don't need to worry about that. They do have fresh air on board, so filtering through new fresh air every 4 to 5 minutes. It is contact free travel, and what that means is you'll hold up your ticket on your smartphone or you can print it out, and the Amtrak employee will scan it with their little wand, but you never have to pass anything back and forth. And of course, they do have private rooms on many of the routes. Certainly, all of the routes we're going to look at today are long distance routes. So, all of those routes will have those private rooms available that you can choose to take and really have your own contained space where you don't need to interact with other folks. Now, do keep in mind as well that all of these vacations that you'll see today are customizable. So, a little bit about today's presentation. We're going to first look at what life is like on board the train, and then we'll talk about some great train routes that you can take all across the US here. And when we talk about those train routes, we're going to talk about the different vacations that you can do along those routes. And please do keep in mind that they are all customizable. So even though they may start someplace like Chicago or Los Angeles, you can easily start any of the trips there from your hometown. You can also make anything into a round trip vacation. So it might start in Chicago, might end in Los Angeles, but you can actually come right back to Chicago or back to your hometown, of course. All of the trips are also customizable as far as the destinations. You can add destinations to a trip. You can add extra nights. For example, if you're looking at one of the trips where it's 2 nights in the Grand Canyon, you can easily add 3 nights there if that's how long you want to stay. You can also upgrade to those private rooms, those private sleeping accommodations on all of these long distance routes. We also have a wide variety of hotels for you to choose from. We have 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star hotel options. And we really pride ourselves here with Amtrak Vacations in having very centrally located hotels. Typically, all of our hotels are going to be within 1 to 2 miles of the train station and also quite close to the major sightseeing attractions in each city as well. And speaking of sightseeing, all of our sightseeing is also customizable, so you can choose what types of tours or activities you want to do on your vacation, again, just based on the way that you like to travel. All right, folks, moving on. Let's, without any further ado, get started on our top 5 tips for traveling by train in 2021. And our first tip is how to pack, right? Packing smart. So with Amtrak, you do get a very generous luggage allowance. You have 2 free carry-on bags and 2 free checked bags. I should have probably put the word free next to checked bags, but those are free as well. So it's 2 free carry-on bags and actually a personal item like a purse, laptop, or backpack, something small like that. And then 2 free checked bags. Now, with the checked bags, I will say that the majority of stations do have checked baggage available, but if you are starting from a smaller hometown station, just let us know or let your local travel advisor know when you call to inquire about the trip, because some of the very small stations don't have checked baggage, but the majority do. Now, with the checked baggage, it does operate similar to an airline. So if you check your baggage in your outgoing spot, your hometown, if you will, maybe it's Boston, like I have in my backyard, you won't see that bag again until you arrive at your destination. Maybe you're headed out to San Francisco. So you do want to make sure that anything that you need on board for your train journey, you do pack with you in a carry-on bag. So, for example, some things that folks often forget to put in their carry-ons: your toothbrush, right? Your pajamas, your clothes for tomorrow. Certainly, any chargers. You're going to want to bring your charger for your phone, your camera, your laptop or tablet. Do, of course, bring those fun electronic devices as well as maybe a deck of cards, a nice book, some activities for you to take part in along the way. You're also welcome to bring your own food and drinks on board the train. And certainly you want to make sure to pack any medications that you're going to want during your trip with you there in your carry-on. Now, when you first board the train, there is a large luggage rack. So you can always leave your bigger bags in the luggage rack and then take a smaller bag up to your room. Now, with the luggage on Amtrak, if you are checking baggage, I definitely recommend arriving at the station about an hour prior to your departure. You can check your bags up to 45 minutes prior to that departure. So if it's a little bit of a larger station, maybe like Chicago or LA, an hour plus would be ideal, just to make sure you get the lay of the land and have time to check those bags in. Now, if you are not going to be checking a bag, maybe you're just traveling for a weekend, just going to bring a carry-on, you can arrive to the station about 30 minutes prior to your departure, and that's plenty of time usually. Last point on baggage is that Amtrak does not have any kind of crazy liquid baggage or liquid restrictions for their baggage, so you can bring a normal sized bottle of shampoo or conditioner onto the train if you have, shampoo that you like to use. Amtrak, of course, does provide little tiny toiletries, but if you want to bring the shampoo you always use at home, you can bring the normal size. You don't have to worry about those travel size bottles, which I think is quite nice. Now, if you are going to be traveling on board the train, I just want to have a quick look at the coach seating for you. We will get into the private rooms in just a moment, but first we'll have a quick look at the coach seats. Now, the coach seating on Amtrak is very comfortable. I actually don't love the term coach because I always think it puts people in mind of an airplane, but the experience on Amtrak really could not be more different. First and foremost, as you can see right away in the photo here, there is no middle seat. You do not have to worry about if the middle seat is blocked off or not because it just does not exist on Amtrak. Instead, they have two seats and then an aisle and then two more seats. The other thing you'll probably notice right off the bat is how much legroom the passengers have. Now, I confess to being a little bit on the shorter side myself, but I cannot kick the seat in front of me. So you definitely will not have to worry about any small children kicking the seat in front of you or behind you kicking your seat, as often happens to me when I'm on an airplane. The seats do recline back quite a bit. It's a 45-degree angle that those seats recline back, so it's quite a bit more, again, than an airplane, not quite all the way flat. Now, if you have an armchair in your living room, I suggest you head out there after the presentation, of course, and give it a lean back. That's about the same amount that the chairs will lean back in the coach seats. You do also have a little footrest that pops up. You've also, of course, got that great big beautiful picture window. There are typically outlets at every seat and a little tray table you can fold down for eating. Now, with Coach, the meals are not included for you, but you can go down to the cafe and purchase foods and drinks in the cafe car on these long distance trains. And as well, you're welcome to bring your own food on board. Of course, if you're looking to uh, experience a few more perks, we'll come to my number two tip, and that's know your perks ahead of time. So if you do upgrade to the private sleeping accommodations, those private rooms on board the train, in addition to getting that private room, which in itself is quite comfortable and very enjoyable, there are a lot of perks that come with that room, and you really are going to want to take advantage of those when you travel by train. First and foremost, if you are traveling from or through any of the large stations here in the US, like Chicago, Los Angeles, Washington, Boston, Seattle, a lot of these large stations will have exclusive station lounges just for those folks that have their own sleeper cabin, those private rooms on board the train. So this is a shot here, a couple shots here of the Metropolitan Lounge in the Chicago Union Station. And they're big, sort of comfy, open, airy spaces where you can relax, kind of get away from the crowds in the station, kind of, sit back and enjoy your time before the train departs. Now, typically they will have some snacks, complimentary snacks and drinks available. It's a little bit of a more limited selection right now due to COVID. Like, they don't have self-service coffee machines right now, which they normally do, just again as a precaution. But normally, and certainly if you're traveling this spring or summer, we expect they'll be back to normal. Hopefully, fingers crossed and everything. But you'll get this nice, comfortable lounge to wait in. Now, when it is time for you to board the train, they're going to make an announcement over the loudspeaker, specifically for you folks with the private rooms. So, if you do have one of the sleepers on board the train, you do get priority boarding access, which is really nice. You can, again, kind of beat the crowds, take a leisurely stroll down to that train, and board at your leisure. You also have a privacy door that you can close and lock when you're in the room for your own comfort and privacy there. Another great perk of having your own private room is that you have a dedicated car attendant. So these car attendants, folks, are fantastic. They are some of my favorite people that I've met on my many cross-country journeys with Amtrak. They are super friendly and super knowledgeable. So if you're passing a certain mountain or a river, you can point out the window and they'll be able to tell you where you are and what you're seeing out the window. These are also the folks who are responsible for changing your seats into beds at night and then changing your beds back up into seats in the morning. You don't have to do that yourself. The attendants will do it for you. They are also the folks who are responsible for keeping all of the facilities spick and span and clean and tidy, which is very comforting to know, especially if you are going to take a roomette, which is our first type of private room on board the train. The roomettes, as you can see here, they're designed for one or two passengers. You've got the great big beautiful picture window so you can really take in that spectacular scenery. You've also got a fold out tray table for watching a movie on your laptop or eating a meal. Climate controls, of course, and outlets. Just to her, well, it'd be her left, I guess it's our right hand side. You can see there's a little sort of space next to her armrest. That's where you can hang up some jackets or coats, things like that. Pretty much is perfect for two jackets because you're most of the time going to have two people in the roomette. As you can see with the roomette, you do face each other. Now, with the roomettes, as you can see, there's not as much room for luggage. These are the slightly smaller of the two types of rooms. So what I often recommend folks to do is leave your larger bags downstairs. So most of the trains we're looking at today are double-decker trains. That's the most common type of long-distance equipment with Amtrak is a double-decker train. So when you very first get on board the train, there's a big area for your luggage, kind of right to your left, a luggage rack. So I always recommend that you leave your bigger bag down on that luggage rack and then take a smaller sort of carry-on size bag up to your room itself. And you can put that carry-on or duffel maybe underneath each person's seat. That's really where that you would probably store those bags and just bring the essentials up. Your toothbrush, your PJs, your book, your laptop, whatever it might be, anything you want to have with you in your room during your journey, and then leave the bigger cases downstairs. Now, in the evening, the roomettes will fold down into bunk beds. You can see here quite a bit of room actually on the top bunk. There is also a little bit of netting, like a straps that you can set up, safety straps if you were concerned about rolling out of the top bunk. I had that question in the last presentation. I've never had any trouble with it. I've been in a room on the top bunk multiple times, but if you are concerned, you could easily set that safety strap up. We also have a couple steps to help you get up to that roomette. There's you can just kind of see the first step by the gentleman's elbow that he's got resting on the bed there, blue on the top and gray on the bottom. There's another one above that that'll help you get up to the top bunk. But I do know that a lot of folks do worry about sort of mobility concerns. And I would say that if both passengers do have mobility concerns, one of the things we can recommend for you is to get two roomettes, to get maybe the roomettes are right across the hall from each other, and then you can sit together during the day. And at night, you would fold down just the bottom bunk in each one of those roomettes. And that way, each person has a lower level bed to sleep in. Now, with the roomettes, your facilities are just down the hall, but the great news is you're not sharing those facilities with everybody on the train. You're not even sharing them with everybody that has a roomette. You're only sharing them with the folks that have a roomette in your train car. Now, there are multiple restrooms. There's 4 restrooms, and then, of course, you've got the shower as well. Now, they are private once you're in there. So once you get in the shower room, you lock the door, and it's your own private space for as long as you need it. It's split up into 2 sections. The shower, there's a changing room area where you can leave your robe or your clothes for tomorrow, whatever it might be. And then, of course, the shower itself. And the sleeper car attendants that we talked about before, those folks are fantastic. They are very dedicated to making sure all those facilities do stay spick and span throughout the day. But if you would prefer to have your own private restroom facilities, or maybe you're just looking for a little bit more space to relax in, you should consider the bedroom accommodations on board the train. Now, with the bedrooms on board the train, again, you've got the great big beautiful picture window and the fold out table. You've got a little bit more storage for your luggage. You can see over the gentleman's head there, there's a spot for luggage. And as well, you can store it underneath the love seat. So you can sit across from each other as this couple is doing, or you can sit side by side on the love seat where the woman was sitting before. We've now got a pair of ladies sitting. You can see how much room is underneath that love seat for your luggage. So definitely a little bit more space here in the bedroom. And of course, what makes the bedroom really special is that it does have its own private facilities. So if you look to the top right hand part of the photo here, you can just about see a towel hanging. That towel is over the vanity. So it's a sink and vanity that faces you across from the love seat. And again, sort of top very edge of the photo, you can just about make out the latch. And that latches to your own private toilet and shower stall. So once you open that door, go inside, you turn on the shower, you're going to get that whole little stall wet, not unlike a sailboat if you've ever been on a sailboat. Um, and but of course it is private and separate from your room. You're not going to have to worry about getting your regular room wet, and it is private just to you folks, which is a great perk of having those bedrooms, especially if you folks are concerned about social distancing. You can even have the meals delivered to you in your bedroom, which we'll see in just a minute. So you can really spend the entire journey just taking in that breathtaking scenery without needing to worry about interacting with too many other folks. Now, in the evening, the bedroom does fold down into bunk beds as well. The bottom bunk is definitely a little bit larger than you had in the roomette. It's about the size of a twin size bed, if you can remember back to your childhood days, your twin size bed. And then the top bunk is really designed just for one adult. Now, at the bedrooms, the top bunk does come with a ladder, so you actually have a real ladder to get up to that top bunk, so it's quite easy to do. I have heard folks tell me that they've slept 2 adults on the bottom bunk, but to be honest, I think you'd have to be quite close to do that. You would be very cozy. What you could potentially do is sleep 1 adult and 1 child on the bottom bunk, though. They do allow for 2 adults and 1 child, 12 or under, to occupy the bedroom. Now, if you do need it, Amtrak does have an accessible room as well. The accessible room is designed for folks who do have a wheelchair, so it's a little bit larger to accommodate that wheelchair. It does have a private restroom, so private toilet and sink. You can see it just behind the attendant's back there. And then with the accessible rooms, there is an accessible shower, but it is right outside of the room. It's not inside the room, it's right outside of the room, but it is accessible. Now, this will fold down into bunk beds at night because it's sort of designed for someone with mobility impairment and then their companion. And again, if you did have concerns about that second person's mobility, what you could always do is reserve the accessible room and then a roomette. There's roomettes just outside the door. So again, you could sit together during the day, and then at night, one person retires to their roomette, so one person stays in the accessible room, and each person would fold down just the bottom bunk there. Now, tip number 3 for traveling by train is to eat up. So, especially if you do have those private accommodations, because if you do have the private rooms on board the train, all of your meals on board the train are included. So, whenever you're on the train at a mealtime, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that meal is included for you. Now, typically, under normal circumstances, when you would head down to the dining car, they have different seatings for dining. Now, those seatings would be 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, that sort of thing. You would make those reservations for your dining time when you get on board. But at the moment, they are encouraging folks to have their meals delivered to you right there in your private room. So you can arrange what time you'd like your meal delivered. And then the staff will bring you your chicken marsala and then your shrimp and andouille sausage right at mealtime at 6 p.m. if that's what you choose. Again, this is related to our current COVID situation, folks wanting to stay a little bit further apart. Now, the dining cars are still open, so you could still choose to head down to the dining car. And certainly, as things normalize a little bit, we expect more folks will be taking advantage of that dining car. Now, if you do go down to the dining car, how it will work is they'll make the announcement over the loudspeaker for you to come down for your 6 p.m. seating, and you'll make your way from your room down to the dining car. One fun little tip on moving about the train, as I mentioned, the trains are double decker trains, and it's actually the top level of the trains that are connected. So once you're up to your room on the top level, you're going to be accessing the observation car and the dining car also on the top level. Fun fact, when you first approach the door to move in between cars, you'll see a push button at arm height, if you will, to open the door. But there's actually also a push button down by your foot. So you can kick the push button and the door will open so you don't, again, have to touch anything, which is pretty nice in these times for sure. Now, our number 4 tip on traveling by train in 2021 is to choose your routes. Choose your routes carefully because there are so many incredible train routes all across the USA and up into Canada. And it really just depends on what you want to see out your window. We've got beautiful coastal scenery on the Coast Starlight and the Pacific Surfliner. That's your top left photo. We've got stunning kind of red rock desert scenery on both the California Zephyr and the Southwest Chief. That's the Southwest Chief featured there. And of course, we've got the incredible Rocky Mountains, both on the California Zephyr and the Empire Builder. That's the Empire Builder on your bottom photo, looking at those northern Rocky Mountains as you travel through Montana. So let's have a look at some of the different itineraries that you could choose, which feature these incredible routes, and we'll talk about and show you what you'll see along the way. So the first trip here we're going to look at is called the Northern Rail Experience. This is one of those trips, rail experience trip, which is designed really for you rail buffs, you folks that want to get on board the train and get off as little as possible. So this one here starts you out in Chicago on the famous Empire Builder route, which goes all the way across 2 days on board the train to Seattle. Now, you will get off the train in Seattle for a couple nights before you take Amtrak's beautiful Coast Starlight train down south to San Francisco. You'll get off in San Francisco for 2 nights, and then you'll take what is probably my favorite train in the whole world, the California Zephyr, from San Francisco 2 days back across to Chicago. So let's have a look at the Empire Builder. That's your first train along this route. Now, it's really stunning scenery pretty much all throughout the journey. You'll board the Empire Builder in the early afternoon and travels across the Mississippi River, which is always quite neat. And then you hit sort of Minneapolis and St. Paul in the evening, and you see the cities all lit up there. I expect after that you'd hit the hay, head to bed for a good night's rest. And when you wake up the next morning, you're going to be crossing the North Dakota plains, so kind of all spread out. You're entering that big sky country through North Dakota and into Montana, and then you really hit the northern Rocky Mountains. And you've got the incredible snow-capped peaks. You travel straight through Glacier National Park there in Montana, and then on your way into Seattle, you actually cross through, when you're going through Washington State, the Cascade Mountains, which was a really lovely part of the journey as well. Now you stop off in Seattle for 2 nights, and while you're there in Seattle, you have admission to the Space Needle, as well as the Glass Garden exhibit, which is located right there at the base of the Space Needle, and you also get a city tour of Seattle. But do keep in mind again that all of this sightseeing is customizable. So, for example, if you are afraid of heights, you certainly do not have to go to the top of the Space Needle. Maybe instead we could do a tour of Pike's Place Market for you, maybe a food tour. Pike's Place Market, of course, famous in Seattle for them throwing fish at each other. Or maybe you want to head out to Mount Rainier or Olympic National Park. Both of those are quite close to Seattle. We've got some great day trips out to the national parks from Seattle. So, really, it's up to you and what you like to do on vacation. We can make sure to customize any of that sightseeing to fit your interests. Now, after Seattle, you will board Amtrak's beautiful Coast Starlight train. Now, the Coast Starlight train, of course, has some incredible stretches of Pacific coastal scenery like you see here. But actually, I really think one of the highlights of the journey is this northern part of the route. So when you first leave Seattle, you leave in the morning, so you're taking advantage of that daylight. And you're going through the Cascade Mountains again, and you're going to see the snow-capped peaks like Mount Shasta and Mount Hood, and it's kind of this lush kind of forests with these valleys and ravines kind of off the side of the train. And then certainly as you do come down into California, you do hit the beautiful Pacific Ocean, and you'll see some lovely coastal scenery on the Coast Starlight train there. Now that's going to bring you into San Francisco, which is a really fun and vibrant city to visit. But it's also a great place to actually get off the train and stretch your legs and get some fresh air and really see some of the great outdoors. So, located just outside of San Francisco is the Muir Woods. The Muir Woods is a grove of gigantic, huge, ancient redwood trees. And we'll take you on a tour to see those incredible redwood trees. We'll pick you up at your hotel in San Francisco, drive you out to the Muir Woods, and then give you plenty of free time to explore. Now, the great thing about Muir Woods is that it's freely accessible for all people of all ages and really don't need to worry too much about mobility concerns in Muir Woods. Lots of the trails throughout the park are all wooden trails, so it's all flat surface for you to walk on. Trust me, I am not much of a hiker myself, and I found it very easy to stroll through. It's just a really absolutely breathtaking area. The street trees are incredible. The picture really does not do them justice. They're tower, tower, super high. They're super fat around as well. Like you can't really tell as much in this photo, but you certainly can't wrap your arms around them. They're really quite incredible. And then after you visit Muir Woods, we'll bring you to the town of Sausalito, where you get to explore for a little bit. And then you take a bay cruise back to San Francisco, which is so neat. I always say if you go all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, you should get out on the water. So we do have you get out onto the Pacific Ocean with that bay cruise back to San Francisco, and you have the opportunity to take some incredible photos of the Golden Gate Bridge along your way. Now, after your stay in beautiful San Francisco, we'll have you board the California Zephyr train. And as I mentioned, folks, this is one of my favorite train rides anywhere in the world, not just here in the US. And what makes the California Zephyr so incredible is that it has such incredibly diverse and changing scenery all throughout its 2-day journey from California to Chicago. So when you first leave California, you're going through the Sierra Nevada mountains. So you've got these beautiful, tall pine trees in the Sierra Nevadas. And then you come into Nevada, and the scenery really changes. And throughout the state of Nevada, you're kind of going through this wide open desert scenery, kind of as far as the eye can see, the tumbleweeds going by the train, right? And then you come into Utah, and it shifts again to kind of this red rock scenery, not unlike what you would see in the Utah National Parks. And it's here in Utah that you first pick up the Colorado River. And the train actually hugs the Colorado River for hundreds of miles as you cross from Utah into the state of Colorado, as you can kind of see in the photo there on the left-hand side. Now, as you hit Colorado, you start climbing up into the Rocky Mountains, and you've got the incredible snow-capped peaks of the Rockies all around you. You come down into Denver, and then kind of from there, it's the Great Plains, and it's really kind of lovely, underrated part of the journey, I think. Uh, you hit the Great Plains kind of at sunset, and you've got the golden sun setting over the rolling wheat fields, really quite lovely. And then as you come into Chicago, of course, you're going across that Mississippi River again, which is so neat to do. I always forget how big it is. It's enormous. So you come across the Mississippi River and on into Chicago on that California Zephyr train ride. So it's a pretty incredible experience. Now the entire trip altogether here is 10 days. So it's 5 nights on board the train and 4 nights hotel accommodation. So like I said, it's definitely geared towards you folks that want to spend more of your time on the train than not. But you do have some great sightseeing included for you in each one of the stops. You've got that sightseeing city tour of Seattle as well as the Space Needle. We've also got a city tour of San Francisco, and then that great day trip out to Muir Woods, Sausalito with the Bay Cruise, and then a great dinner there in Fisherman's Wharf is included for you in San Francisco. So this trip here, 10 days, starts at $13.99 per person. And that is based on two people sharing a room, just because that's our most common request. But certainly, if you're a solo traveler or traveling as a group of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it might be, just let us know, and we can easily get you the rates for the trip, starting, as a solo or a group of 3 or 4, whatever it might be. Now, the national parks are, of course, one of the most popular places for people to take the train. We've got Glacier National Park, Grand Canyon, Yosemite, Yellowstone, all kinds of incredible places that you can visit by train here in the US. And we're going to look at one of my favorite national parks here now, which is the Grand Canyon. This trip here, Rails to the Grand Canyon, is one of our most popular trips. And I think it's a great trip, especially for folks maybe who, well, A, don't have 11 days to travel, right? Or B, it's a great trip if you've never been on the train before and you're not quite sure you want to spend 2 weeks going all the way cross country and back. This one here is just 2 nights on board the train. And they're not extensive, overnights as well. So you travel from Los Angeles overnight out to Williams, Arizona. You spend 2 nights there in the Grand Canyon, and then you take the train on back to Los Angeles. So quite easy to do. Now, the train that you're going to be journeying on is called the Southwest Chief. This is a really lovely ride. Again, some beautiful desert scenery kind of there in Arizona. As you leave California, come into Arizona, you're really seeing some pretty stunning desert kind of scenery here, and very comfortable ride. So this one, as I say, you'll board in the early evening. So again, if you are boarding from Los Angeles and you do have that private room on board the train, make sure that you take advantage of the Metropolitan Lounge there in Union Station in Los Angeles. You've got that exclusive lounge access. They'll make the announcement overhead for you to take the priority boarding of the train. You'll head down to the train and get settled into your private room. And then it's time for dinner, which again you can enjoy in the comfort of your room or head out to the dining car. That's included if you do take one of the roomettes or bedrooms or accessible rooms, any type of room, the meals are included. Now, after dinner, maybe grab a drink, a cocktail in the cafe, and then head in for a good night's rest. When you wake up the next morning, you're going to be located right there in Flagstaff, Arizona. The train's going to stop in Flagstaff, and you'll get off the train, collect your luggage. And then what happens is we actually pick you up there in Flagstaff, and we'll bring you right over to this Grand Canyon Railway train. I love all of our trips to the Grand Canyon because I think they include a bonus train ride because not only do you get to ride on Amtrak, you get to ride on the historic Grand Canyon Railway. This has actually been operating since 1901. It's refurbished Pullman cars here on the Grand Canyon Railway. Several different classes of service, including the beautiful dome car that you see at the top there. If you're in parlor class, you can check out the back of the train like you see in that bottom photo there. And what's going to happen is the Grand Canyon Railway train is going to take you from Williams, Arizona, right up into the national park itself. So it actually brings you inside Grand Canyon National Park, right there to the South Rim. And then this trip does include a sightseeing tour, so you'll get off the train and pretty much walk across the train tracks, and your tour is going to be waiting there for you. So we make it very easy. You'll get on that tour, and it will take you to several incredible overlooks like this one, where you can take some fantastic photos of the always impressive Grand Canyon. And then you're going to spend 2 nights there inside the national park at one of the historic national park lodges, like the El Tovar, which you see pictured right here. Little pro tip for the Grand Canyon: whether you're staying at El Tovar or not, I highly recommend making a dinner reservation for the El Tovar. Their dining room does overlook the canyon, and you can have some pretty incredible meals watching the sunset over the canyon from their dining room. And again, of course, all of these are customizable. So we have you staying in this particular itinerary for 2 nights at the Grand Canyon, but you could easily stay for 3 nights or 4 nights, whatever you prefer. We can customize that for you quite easily. But the trip as designed here is 5 days total, 2 nights on board the train and 2 nights at the canyon. And it starts at $9.49 per person. Now, as I said, that is based on the coach accommodations, and it's based on two people sharing, the room at the hotels. Now, I will say the reason that we price all of our trips from Coach on board Amtrak is because the prices for the roomettes and the bedrooms are very subject to change. They can change quite a bit just depending on what route you're on, how long you're on the train, when you book, where you're going, all these kind of different factors, what time of year you're going, how early you book is a big factor as well. But I always think that if I don't give you any idea what the pricing is, you'll automatically assume it's expensive, which is really not always the case. So on this exact trip, so Rails to the Grand Canyon, that's LA to Grand Canyon and then back to LA, so 2 nights on board the train. I looked at it for the beginning of June. Um, just to give you an idea, the first departure we have in June, which I think is the 3rd of June. And to upgrade to the roomette, as of this morning at least, it was 75 per person to upgrade to that roomette. And for the bedroom, which as you saw was double the size of the roomettes, the bedroom was 215 per person. So the roomettes were 75 per person. The bedrooms were about 215 per person. Just to give you a little idea, I looked in April as well, and the roomettes were about 100 per person, and the bedrooms were about 250 per person. So it all depends on when you book and how early you book as well. So the earlier the better. Once you know where you're going, if you're among the first people to book those rooms on the train, typically you get the best rates for those different rooms. And again, this is just specific to this Rails to the Grand Canyon trip. If you're going to be on the train for 5 days instead of 2, of course, the upgrades will be a little bit more, right? So just to give you an idea, though. So our next trip here, Grand Canyon to Yosemite. This one here features the three routes, or three of our great routes that we've seen so far. The Southwest Chief, so Chicago aboard the Chief out to Williams. You spend 2 nights there in the Grand Canyon. You then continue on to California with the Southwest Chief. That brings you into Los Angeles. Here's one where you do change trains the same day in LA. You get in about 8:15 in the morning and you leave about 10 o'clock that same day. So just under 2 hour layover. It's kind of the perfect amount of time, enough time that you're not feeling rushed, but not so much that you get bored. And again, don't forget, if you have the private room, you can relax in the station lounge there in Los Angeles. And then you take the southern half of the coast Starlight, which is really quite a lot of beautiful coastal scenery, up to San Francisco. Spend 3 nights there in San Francisco, and that gives you the opportunity to take an incredible trip out to Yosemite National Park, and then 2 overnights back across to Chicago on the California Zephyr, that beautiful, beautiful ride through the Sierra Nevadas, the Red Rocks of Utah, and the Colorado Rockies. So as I said, this one here does start out with the Southwest Chief, and you do get to do the full Southwest Chief route on this one, which is really quite nice. You get to see all the scenery along that route, and of course stop there in the fantastic Grand Canyon. Some fun facts about the Grand Canyon: it is one of our most visited national parks. Teddy Roosevelt actually said that if you can, you should visit the, the Grand Canyon in your lifetime. It's one of the reasons it's so breathtaking is because it literally just stretches on and on and on as far as the eye can see. It's over 277 miles long and up to 18 miles wide at its widest point. And after you take in all those fun facts and get your incredible photos of the canyon, you'll travel on to San Francisco. And you spend 3 nights there in San Francisco, which gives you plenty of time to do the full day tour out to Yosemite National Park. So the way this tour works is we'll pick you up at your hotel in San Francisco, drive you out to the park. You'll get a guided tour of the park, seeing some great overlooks, some great spots to take some photos, and then you'll have a lot of free time to explore the park. So you'll get to see the soaring granite cliffs and tumbling waterfalls. Yosemite Falls, as you see here, it's actually made up of three different waterfalls, and together they make up one of the tallest waterfalls in the world. Now, I always tell folks who are visiting Yosemite National Park to pack a pair of binoculars because not only could you see some incredible wildlife, it's home to bears, deer, moose, coyotes, peregrine falcons, golden eagles. You can also often spy climbers on the famous granite cliffs of Half Dome and El Capitan. So, like the cliff you see in the photo there, you can often, if you've got binoculars, spy tiny little climbers clinging to the cliff sides. Now, Yosemite National Park, you can do the day trip as we do in this trip, but of course, all of our packages are customizable. So if you want to spend time in Yosemite, we can easily set that up for you. You can take the same tour from San Francisco down to Yosemite, but instead of coming right back the same day, you can spend a few nights exploring the area. We can set you up with accommodations down there in one of the lodges, and then you can take the transfer back to San Francisco so that you can get on that stunning California Zephyr train back to Chicago. Now, this one, though, is just the day trip out to Yosemite. So, this Grand Canyon and Yosemite vacation here, it's 11 days. It starts at $2,249 per person, just to give you an idea. Now, just quickly, I do want to touch on our maximum flexibility offer. So I know that it is a little bit of an unusual time to be looking at a trip here with all the different travel restrictions. So we are trying to make this as easy as possible for you folks. If you do book your trip this year, so book your trip by the 31st of December, it does not matter when you travel. You can travel in 2021 or 2022. Whenever you travel, you can go ahead and make any changes you need to your reservation. So you can change your dates, change your destination, change your hotels, add people, subtract people, whatever it might be. You can make all those changes. Or if you need to, you could cancel the trip right up until 5 days prior to your departure. So, for example, you could book this week and then you could make changes all as much as you want out until your travel date, and you only have to stop at 5 days prior to your departure. So, just to give you an idea, trying to make it as flexible as possible for you folks. Now, I know that not everybody has 11 days or 14 days to go on vacation, so we'll look at a little bit of a shorter trip here for you. So, this one here is New Orleans Ultimate Getaway round trip from Chicago. This one here starts in Chicago. It's one overnight on the famous City of New Orleans train down to New Orleans. And then 3 nights in New Orleans, and then one night back on the City of New Orleans, back up to Chicago, made famous by the City of New Orleans song by Arlo Guthrie. If you've not heard it, check it out. It's a good time. And of course, the highlight of this trip really is the 3 nights that you spend there in New Orleans. It's an absolutely fantastic, vibrant, fun city to visit. I've been there multiple times and can't wait to go back. They've got incredible food. The Creole and Cajun food in New Orleans is fantastic. And we do include in this trip dinner for you at a popular local restaurant right in the heart of the French Quarter. You could actually, instead of dinner, choose to do brunch instead, also right in the French Quarter. You would eat outside in this beautiful courtyard and listen to a jazz quartet play through your brunch. So it's your choice of meal. You also get to choose from a variety of tours. We've got kind of a standard city tour. We have a cruise out on the Mississippi River. Or my favorite was the Swamp and Bayou tour. So we've got the bayou pictured up here. You can go out and see alligators and egrets and all kinds of different wildlife there on your Swamp and Bayou tour. And we also do have an attractions pass for you. One little pro tip for New Orleans is that the attractions pass does include lots of activities like the Audubon Museum, the aquarium, but especially it has a cooking class included, which I think is really quite fun. You can learn to make pralines, which are these great little caramel pecan candies, jambalaya, and much more. So this one here, it's just 6 days. It's 5 nights altogether. Starts at $1,039 per person. And before we get to our final itinerary, I just want to highlight tip number 5, which is to maximize your views. So we've looked at the views on board the train from coach and from the roomettes in the bedrooms, but we have not talked much about the observation car. And I really think the observation car is absolutely one of the highlights of your trip on board any of these long distance trains. So as I mentioned, they are double decker trains. So the cafe is on the bottom level. The cafe will serve you snacks and drinks all throughout the day. And they're available for purchase in the cafe. And it's got seating and tables and things like that. And then upstairs, so that you get the best view, is this observation car. And you've got these big, comfy seats. They face out to these big, overarching windows. You do have outlets at the seats to charge your phones. You can get those incredible photos, right? And it's just really a great atmosphere and a great place to relax and really enjoy that scenery. Also great because that way, if all of a sudden you round a bend and there's a mountain on one side and a river on the other, you can kind of take in both of those views. Now, I have had people ask about seating in the observation car. So I will say that on normal times, I've never had trouble getting a seat in the observation car. You do have to consider that folks are most of the time not riding the train all the way through the 2 full days from Seattle, to Chicago. They're getting off in Glacier Park or places like that. Um, I do know with COVID, it is still open, but it is a little bit more limited seating because they are enforcing social distancing. So if you do have some trouble finding spots in the observation car, a couple of recommendations for you. I always recommend checking it out at meal times because people will be eating in the dining car or going back to their room for their meals, right? So check it out at especially lunch and dinner times. As people get up and go back to their rooms, you should be able to find a seat. You can also check it out as you're nearing one of the larger stations. So, for example, on the California Zephyr, it's very common for folks to get off in Denver for a couple days and go see Rocky Mountain National Park. So check it out, when you're hitting one of those larger stops like Denver, just before you get to that stop, because people will be getting up, going back to their room or their seat to get their stuff ready in order to get off at that larger stop. So just a couple tips on the observation car there for you. And certainly ask your sleeper car attendant or ask your Amtrak employees when in the journey you're going to see the best sights, right? Like I know in the California Zephyr, sunrise is pretty spectacular, of course, but ask them about what time do they think you're going to start getting into the Rocky Mountains, and make sure you head down to the observation car so that you're already in the car when the train starts climbing into the Rocky Mountains, for example. All right, and our final trip here, I left the best for last. This one is absolutely for you train buffs. This is for you folks that want to get on the train, see as much of the US, as many Amtrak routes as possible on one vacation, and get off only minimal amounts of times. So this trip here is the Grand Rail experience. It starts in Chicago. It starts in the Empire Builder, 2 overnights out to Seattle, stay in Seattle for a couple nights just to make the schedule work. And then it's all the way down the full Coast Starlight train route. You got the Northern Cascades and the Southern coastal scenery down to LA. You stop in LA just for the night to make the schedule work and then continue on to New Orleans. It's 2 overnights on the train in New Orleans on the Sunset Limited train. You spend 2 nights in New Orleans, continue on to Washington, D.C., and then on back to Chicago. So one giant circle. I will say you can start this at any of the points. If you want to start the trip in Seattle or start the trip in LA and make the circle, we can do that for you quite easily. But as we've got it designed, you start here in Chicago. And as I say, on that Empire Builder, you do pass through Glacier National Park. So some pretty stunning scenery on your way out to Montana before you arrive in Seattle. Now, while you're there in Seattle, we do have the hop on, hop off sightseeing tour included for you, as well as admission to the Space Needle. Before you get on board the Coast Starlight for that full journey all the way down the entire Pacific coast on the Coast Starlight. And again, you see those Cascade Mountains kind of in the northern part. Now, when you get down to around San Francisco, you actually cut inland and you're going through wine country. You're going through some beautiful vineyards and different parts of the wine country there in California. And then you hit the coast again, and it's hours of coastline on your way into Los Angeles. So really beautiful scenery there on the Coast Starlight train. And now, while you're in Los Angeles, you do have a hop on, hop off sightseeing tour. So you can visit Rodeo Drive, Hollywood Boulevard, of course, see the famous Hollywood sign and the Chinese Theater, or maybe head out to Santa Monica Pier and dip your toes in the Pacific Ocean before you board Amtrak's Sunset Limited. So you hit the northernmost train route with the Empire Builder. Now you're hitting Amtrak's southernmost train route here in the US with the Sunset Limited. It travels from LA through southern Arizona, southern New Mexico. And you get that incredible, beautiful desert kind of scenery like you see on the left hand side. You go all the way through the state of Texas. And then as you come into Louisiana, you hit bayou country, and it really, the scenery changes. You go over all these little bridges, over all these waterways. You've got the vibrant green vegetation, the Spanish moss hanging overhead. It's really lovely on your journey into New Orleans. And of course, we have you spend a couple nights there in New Orleans, get off the train, stretch your legs a little bit, take in some incredible sights, culture, music, food, before you board the Crescent train to head up to Washington, D.C. Now, the Crescent train is the only single level train we'll look at today. All the others have been double deckers. But the Crescent train here, which travels from New Orleans up through kind of the American South, through Charlottesville and Greenville, up into Washington, D.C., that is a single level train. Mainly the reason for that is the tunnels on the East Coast are not all tall enough to accommodate the double-decker trains. So we've got these lovely single-level Viewliner trains here on the East Coast. So that's the Crescent. That'll bring you up into Washington, D.C., where you do spend one night. And while you're there in Washington, we do have you do a great tour called the Monuments by Moonlight Tour. Now, the Monuments by Moonlight tour is fantastic. It takes you all around the city of Washington, so you can see those beautiful, spectacular monuments like the Capitol Building, the Lincoln Memorial, and much more, all lit up at night. Before you take the Capital Limited train on back to Chicago to finish out your journey. So it's one overnight here on the Capital Limited back to Chicago. The Capital Limited, of course, really lovely ride kind of through West Virginia and places like that, really kind of rolling hillsides. You've got some excellent fall foliage on the Capital Limited. If you were looking for a trip out next fall, you can see in that bottom photo there the beautiful foliage you take in on that Capital Limited, and that'll bring you back to Chicago. So this one here, the Grand Rail Experience, is a 14-day journey. Starts at $21.99 per person, which is really quite great for 2 weeks on board the train. Of course, I don't have, unfortunately, the upgrade prices. This one would certainly be a bit more because you're on the train for so many more nights. But just give us a call or call your local travel advisor, and we can let you know what it would be in a room or in a bedroom. Now, we do have some great discounts for you as well, so do keep those in mind. We've got discounts if anybody in your party counts as a child, age 2 to 12, senior 65 or older, or military. Both active duty and veterans do get discounts on board Amtrak, so certainly keep that in mind. Now, if you had fun today, we do these quite often. We've got our next one here coming up on the 8th of December is the U.S. National Parks by Rail. So we'll focus in on some of those great national parks like Grand Canyon and Yosemite and talk about some of the more popular ones as well, like Yellowstone and Glacier National Park, some of the Utah parks as well there. So definitely stay tuned if you're interested in traveling out to the national parks. And then when we come back on the 12th of January, we'll do trip here, or a presentation here rather, on the overnight rail journeys with Amtrak. So we'll take an even deeper dive into what it's like on board that train and what that overnight kind of train experience is like. So I will be answering as many of your questions as we do have time for. Thank you so much for all your questions. But before that, I do have a quick question for you. And that is, what destination are you interested in, and when are you interested in travel? As you saw, we do these presentations quite frequently, so I always like to keep them fun and updated for you. So just type away in the questions box what destinations you might be interested in, and we'll go ahead and make sure to include them in some of our upcoming presentations. All right, folks, so without any further ado, just get to as many of your questions as we do have time for in the next couple of minutes. First question here is from Janet. Janet asks, if the train is held up due to weather, how long is it usually stopped? approved? So great question, Janet. So obviously it all depends on what the particular situation might be, if there's something on the tracks that needs to get cleared off or anything like that. Overall, Amtrak does try and keep the delays as minimal as possible. They know folks are going to be connecting from one train to another, but it's always a good policy if you're going to be arriving on a train to leave at least a couple hours in between your train journeys. I would not book a connection with less than a 2-hour layover, to give you an idea, if that makes sense. Great question here from Janet as well. Traveling this month from Arizona to Florida, is the dining car open yet? So great question, Janet. So the dining car is open. At this time, you would not be seated with other passengers, though. It would just be your party in the dining car. You are encouraged to get the meals delivered to you in your room, but you don't have to. As a sleeper car passenger, you do still have access to that dining car if you prefer to go down there and have your meal in the dining car. I will say it is going to be flexible dining on board the train up until May. So flexible dining is a little bit different menu than the traditional dining that you might be used to. You can see it right on our website if you like, the flexible dining menu. It was the one I had in the slide, so it is a wide selection of choices: chicken marsala, shrimp and andouille sausage, braised beef, that sort of thing. But it is designed to be a little bit easier to prepare with less staff, just again to minimize kind of the amount of people interacting with your food. It's really one of the COVID precautions that they have right now. So if you are traveling this month, you will be getting the flexible dining, but you can choose to eat it in the dining car if you like. Next question here. From Judy, how many roomettes per car? So great question, Judy. So on the double-decker trains, there are 4 roomettes downstairs and 10 roomettes upstairs. And of course, they may or may not all be full on your journey. It just depends. Certainly, if you're traveling at a little bit less popular time of year, they may not all be filled up. Or if you're traveling in peak summertime, going out to one of the national parks, each roomette may be occupied. Just up to the luck of the draw, really. On the Viewliner trains, so the single level trains like the Crescent train, there are less roomettes because it's just a one level train. I believe there are 10, but I could be wrong. I know for a fact, though, on the double decker trains, it's 4 on the bottom and 10 on the top. Question here from Thomas. Is the Canadian border still closed? Great question, Thomas. At this time, the border with Canada is closed, so Amtrak is not running any trains into Canada right now. So for example, the train that goes from New York to Niagara Falls will go as far as Niagara Falls, New York, but does not continue on to the Canadian side. As soon as the border reopens, Amtrak is prepared to restart those trains, so it's really just up to whenever the government officials decide to reopen the border, Amtrak will be ready to run the trains. Let's see, just looking at the next question here. From Heather, I think she's asking about oh, yep, sorry. From Heather asking about the pricing and the roomettes and the bedrooms on our Rails to the Grand Canyon trip. So great question, Heather. So the roomettes were $75 per person for the upgrade to the roomette on both nights. So that's including 2 nights. So 75 total per person, if that makes sense. It's not 75 per night. It's 75 total per person for that trip, and $215 per person for the bedroom. And then, as I said, they do fluctuate. So don't quote me on that for every month of the year, but for example, like in April, it was a little bit more, right? It was $250 per person and $100 per person. And again, that's specific to that Rails to the Grand Canyon trip. The upgrade cost would be different on a longer trip, for example. But that's just to give you guys a kind of a ballpark on what you're looking at. So that's 2 nights on board. If you're going for 4 nights, you can sort of exponentially increase that, right? Next question here from Ronald. How long is the trip from Chicago to Williams, Arizona to do the Grand Canyon? Great question, Ronald. So you would leave Chicago in the mid-afternoon. It's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon that you leave, and you'd arrive in Williams the following evening. It's around 8 or 9 in the evening, depending on daylight savings time, because Arizona doesn't participate the same way the rest of us do, or parts of it anyway. So it just depends on the time of year that you travel, but it's one overnight on the train. Like I say, you leave Chicago around 3 o'clock and you'll be in Arizona the following evening. Hope that helped. Next question here from Mary. Mary would like to know, is the observation car handicapped accessible? So that's a great question, Mary. It really depends on your level of mobility, because the observation car is upstairs. So if you cannot navigate the stairs, then unfortunately you would not be able to get up to the observation car. The accessible room is on the bottom level, and it does have a huge, big, beautiful picture window, so you can really take in some of that beautiful scenery. If you are comfortable doing stairs, it's about 6 stairs. It's 3 stairs and then a little landing and then like 3 more stairs. And there are railings, available. So if you can get up the stairs, then you could visit the observation car, but it just depends on your level of mobility there. All right, last question that we have time for here, folks. And again, certainly if you do have any questions I haven't had a chance to answer, I will make sure that somebody from the team does reach out to you and get back to you with those answers. Last question here from Jill. How easy is it to take good in focus pictures from the train? Jill, I love this question because that's always what I think about when I'm traveling on board the train. So in a lot of cases, you can take pretty good photos from the train. So I've got some pretty decent photos, especially on the California Zephyr and the Coast Starlight. It's really the parts of the journey where the train has to slow down a little bit, where you can get better in focus pictures. You also have to play a little bit with the lighting. So it's always good to sort of try it with the flash and without the flash, right? Because you want to get it without the glare from the window. So yeah, it's a great question. It really just depends where you are in your journey, because it can go certainly when you're going through like the deserts, right? Man, there's nobody around and the train is going straight and flat. The train can really get up to pretty high speed, and you're not going to get as good of a picture out the window. But the great thing about especially the California Zephyr train ride is you're going through the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas, in the Rockies. You're hugging that Colorado River, so the train can't go super fast because it's going around some tight bends and it's in mountains. So you can really get some great shots out the window, in those cases. And it's really just about having a steady hand as well. I definitely think today's phone cameras are much better than the phone cameras 5 years ago. Like I can get some really pretty good photos on my phones these days versus my first trip ever. I look at them and I'm like, well, that's blurry and that's blurry. Obviously, if you've got a nicer camera as well, that would help you. But a lot of the phones nowadays do have good like stabilization and things like that. So I would say that you can definitely get some pretty nice photos from the train for sure. Doesn't hurt, honestly, to bring a little like wipes, like little alcohol wipes though for your window, just to make sure, like in case there's like smudges on it, you can kind of wipe them off a little bit. So just some tips on train photography there for everybody. I hope this helped. And again, I promise if I didn't have a chance to get to your question, I will make sure that somebody from the team does reach out to you to get you those answers that you need. I hope you folks had a great time today. I really enjoyed spending my afternoon with you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with us here at Amtrak Vacations. I hope you enjoyed it. And I especially hope that you folks have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much.